The announcement hall of the Galactic Council station buzzed with dozens of different sounds. Clicks, whistles, growls, and hums mixed together as representatives from 12 different species gathered for the briefing. Min stood near the back wall, arms crossed, watching the chaos. Next to him, Jin was reading something on her data pad, her face calm and focused. "Look at them," a crystalline being said loudly, its voice like wind chimes. The creature's name was, and its body sparkled under the station lights. "The humans actually think they have a chance. How amusing." Several other aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Min didn't react. He had heard worse during his years working on frontier stations. Jin glanced up briefly, then went back to her reading. A massive reptilian figure entered the hall, and the noise died down quickly. Commander was over 3 meters tall, covered in dark green scales. His eyes swept across the gathered crowd before he spoke. "Welcome to the frontier colonization test," said, his voice deep and rumbling. 12 species, 1 goal, survive 15 days on 9. Holographic images appeared in the center of the room. A frozen planet rotated slowly, its surface covered in ice and snow. The data next to it made several aliens shift nervously. Temperature range, -90 to -180 degrees. Atmosphere, breathable but thin. Native life, none. "Each species will send 2 representatives," continued. "You will be given basic materials, metal sheets, fabric, simple tools, and limited power cells. No advanced technology beyond what we provide. No rescue unless you signal for emergency evacuation." "This is barbaric," someone muttered. "This is necessary," replied. "Frontier colonies fail because species depend too much on technology that breaks down. We need colonists who can adapt and survive when systems fail. The species that succeeds will earn a permanent seat on the colonization committee and access to the best frontier worlds." Min finally smiled a little. This was the kind of challenge he understood. No fancy equipment, just basic problem solving. He had grown up in a small village before joining the engineering corps. He knew how to work with simple tools. His voice rang out again. "My people have thermal dome technology. This test will be simple." And creature named nodded, its antennae twitching. "Our climate suits can maintain perfect temperature for weeks." "Then you should have no problems," said, but there was something in his tone that made Min pay attention. The commander sounded almost amused. The briefing continued for another hour. Each team would be dropped in a different zone, far enough apart that they couldn't interfere with each other. Monitoring stations would track vital signs and environmental conditions. Emergency beacons were provided for anyone who wanted to quit. After the briefing ended, Min and Jin walked back to their quarters. The station corridors were crowded with aliens preparing for the test. "Did you see the geological data?" Jin asked, finally speaking. "The ice formations," Min replied. "Not just ice. There are methane deposits, frozen but combustible if you can control the burn." Min nodded slowly, while everyone else uses their power cells for heating. "We use them for lights and tools and burn methane for warmth," Jin finished. "Old-fashioned but effective." They spent the next 2 days preparing. While other teams tested their advanced equipment, the humans studied maps and planned. Jin reviewed everything she knew about human thermoregulation and cold weather survival. Min sketched designs for simple structures. On the 3rd day, they stood in the transport bay with the other teams. Everyone was suited up. Most aliens wore impressive thermal gear that hummed with power. The humans wore thick, layered clothing that looked crude by comparison. "Good luck not freezing, primitives," said as he passed them. His partner, another crystalline being, made that wind chime laugh sound. Jin looked at Min and shrugged. "Let them talk." The transport ride to 9 was short. Min watched through the window as the frozen planet grew larger. It was actually beautiful in a harsh way. The ice reflected light in shades of blue and white. But he could see the challenge too. No trees, no shelter, just endless frozen plains and ice formations. Their team was dropped third. The transport landed briefly, just long enough for them to unload their supplies and step out. Then it lifted off again, leaving them alone. The cold hit immediately. Even through his layers of clothing, Min felt it. The wind cut across the ice like knives. The sun was bright but gave almost no warmth. He took a deep breath and the air burned his lungs. -120 degrees, Jin said, checking her instrument. And the sun sets in 4 hours. It'll get much worse. They looked at their supplies. 10 metal sheets, each about 2 meters square, 50 meters of thick fabric, a box of basic tools, hammer, saw, welding torch, fasteners, 2 power cells, some rations. That was it. First priority, Min said, shelter from the wind. They started moving, pulling their supplies on a makeshift sled. The ice was slippery but solid. About half a kilometer from their drop point, they found what they were looking for, a natural ice formation that created a small cave-like depression. The opening faced away from the prevailing wind. Perfect, Jin said. They worked quickly as the sun moved across the sky. Min used the metal sheets to create a wind barrier at the cave entrance, leaving a small gap for air circulation. Jin laid out the fabric to create insulation layers on the floor and walls. They worked without talking much, each knowing what needed to be done. As they worked, they could see their breath turning to ice crystals in the air. Min's fingers were going numb despite his gloves, but they kept going. The sun touched the horizon and the temperature dropped like a stone. -150 degrees, then 160. Inside their shelter, protected from the wind, it was still brutally cold. Time for fire, Min said. They had spotted the methane ice deposit during their walk. It looked like regular ice but had a slightly different color. Min carefully chipped off small pieces and brought them back. Using the welding torch and a metal container, they created a small, controlled burn. The flame was tiny but warm. They huddled around it, adding more methane carefully. Too much and it would explode. Too little and they would freeze. This is going to be a long night, Jin said. Min nodded. Through the small gap in their shelter, he could see stars appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, the other teams were in their heated domes and climate pods, comfortable and warm. But comfortable wasn't always the same as safe. And Min had learned long ago that the best solutions were often the simplest ones. He fed another small piece of methane into the flame and settled in for the night. The real test was just beginning. The first night on 9 felt endless. Min kept the small methane flame burning while Jin monitored their vital signs and temperature readings. Outside their shelter, the temperature had dropped to -175 degrees. Inside, protected from the wind with their small fire, it was -80. Still brutally cold but survivable. How are your fingers? Jin asked around midnight. Cold, Min admitted, but moving them helps. He demonstrated by flexing his hands repeatedly. Blood flow is key. Jin nodded. She was doing the same thing with her toes, wiggling them inside her boots. Human thermoregulation is actually impressive when you think about it. We can survive temperature ranges that would kill most species. Tell that to my frozen nose, Min said, but he was smiling slightly. They took turns through the night. One person would sleep while the other maintained the fire and kept watch. It wasn't comfortable sleep, more like brief periods of rest, but it worked. When dawn finally came, they were both tired but alive. Min crawled out of the shelter to check conditions. The sun was rising, and with it came slightly warmer temperatures. -120 degrees, almost pleasant compared to the night. How did the others do? Jin wondered aloud as she joined him outside. Back on the orbital station, Commander was reviewing the monitoring data. His assistant, a small blue-skinned alien, pointed at the screens. All teams survived the first night, the assistant reported. The crystalline team's group used 60% of their power cell capacity to maintain their thermal dome. 60% in one night, rumbled. Yes, Commander. The team's group used 45%. Most other teams used between 30 and 50%. And the humans? The assistant checked the data. 5%. They used their power cell only for lighting and their welding torch. Primary heat source appears to be burning methane ice. His eyes narrowed with interest. Clever. Down on the planet, Min and Jin were making improvements to their shelter. The first night had taught them several things. They needed better insulation at the entrance. The smoke from their fire needed a better exit path, and they needed a system to store heat for when the fire was low. Min used 2 of the metal sheets to create a double-wall entrance. The space between the walls trapped air, providing insulation. He left a small gap at the top for smoke to escape. Jin gathered several large rocks from nearby ice formations. She placed them near the fire. Thermal mass, she explained. The rocks will absorb heat during the day and release it slowly at night. By midday, their shelter was significantly improved. They had also mapped out the nearby area, finding more methane deposits and identifying the best routes for gathering supplies. We should check on water, Jin said. They set up a simple system using a metal container placed near the fire. Ice melted slowly, providing fresh water. It was basic, but it worked. Meanwhile, in the other camps, things were going differently. Stood inside his thermal dome, watching readouts with growing concern. The dome was beautiful, a shimmering hemisphere of energy that kept the interior at a comfortable 20 degrees. But maintaining it was draining power faster than he had expected. We have enough for 12 more days at this rate, his partner said. The test lasts 15 days. His crystalline form flashed with irritation. Reduce the temperature, we don't need it this warm. But the regulations say. I don't care about comfort regulations. Set it to 5 degrees, that's still above freezing. In the camp was having similar conversations. The climate-controlled pod was perfect, maintaining ideal temperature and humidity, but the power consumption was constant and heavy. We could shut down the humidity control, suggested. That would make us uncomfortable, the partner replied. Uncomfortable is better than frozen, said, making the decision. The second night was easier for the humans. Their improvements made a real difference. The double-wall entrance kept the wind out better. The thermal mass rocks gave off gentle heat even when the fire burned low. They had also learned to manage their methane fuel more efficiently. This is almost comfortable, Jin said, which was a huge exaggeration, but Min understood what she meant. They weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were managing. On the third day, they made even more improvements. Min built a better ventilation system using metal pipes made from rolled sheets. The smoke now drew upward more efficiently, and fresh air came in from a low entrance without bringing in too much cold. Jin created a food storage area in a natural ice depression. The cold that was their enemy could also be their friend. Food wouldn't spoil here. She also set up a better sleeping area with multiple layers of fabric creating air pockets for insulation. By day 4, their camp looked almost organized. They had a routine. Morning, check the fire, melt ice for water, eat a small meal. Midday, gather more methane, make improvements, exercise to stay warm. Evening, prepare for night, maintain the fire, rest. We're actually getting better at this, Min observed. Jin agreed. Each day we learn something new. That's the human advantage right there. Back in orbit, was seeing the pattern too. The monitoring data showed that while most alien teams were maintaining their status, slowly draining their power reserves, the human team's efficiency was actually improving. The human's shelter temperature has increased by 15 degrees over 4 days, his assistant reported. Their power cell usage remains minimal, and their vital signs are stable, Better than stable, actually. They appear to be adapting. Made a thoughtful sound. Other council members were starting to pay attention to the human team, too. It wasn't what they had expected. On the ground was not having a good time. Even with reduced temperatures in his dome, the power drain was concerning. Worse, the constant cold outside meant any trip out of the dome was miserable. They had gathered all their supplies on the first day and hadn't left since. "We should scout the area," his partner suggested. "Why? We have everything we need right here. The humans are moving around. They might be finding resources." Sform flashed dismissively. "Let them scramble around in the cold. We have superior technology." But that night, as watched his power reserves drop below 50%, he felt the first hint of worry. They were only on day 4. 11 days remained. In the human camp, Min added another piece of methane to the fire and smiled. The flame danced cheerfully, casting warm light on the ice walls. Outside, the temperature was negative 160 degrees. Inside, it was negative 50 and getting warmer. "You know what's funny?" he said to Jin. "What?" "When I was a kid in my village, we heated our home with a wood stove. My grandfather built it himself. Everyone said we were old-fashioned, primitive." Jin smiled, "And now?" "Now I'm on a frozen planet, heating our shelter with burning ice. And we're doing better than species with technology that costs more than my entire village." "Primitive works," Jin said. "Primitive works," Min agreed. They settled in for another night, comfortable in their small, warm shelter while the frozen hell raged outside. Day 5 began like the previous days. Min woke first and checked their fire. The methane was burning steadily. He added a bit more fuel and then stepped outside to stretch. The dawn sun painted the ice in shades of pink and gold, beautiful but still deadly cold. Jin joined him after a few minutes. "Temperature's negative 110, she said. "Actually feels warm compared to night." They went through their morning routine. Water, food, checking their equipment. They had fallen into a comfortable pattern, but that pattern was about to break. Around midday, Jin noticed something on her instruments. "That's strange. Magnetic readings are spiking." Min looked over her shoulder at the display. "How bad?" "I'm not sure, but it's building fast." She frowned at the data. "This could be a storm." She was right. Within an hour, the magnetic field around 9 began to fluctuate wildly. It started as a barely noticeable shimmer in the air. Then the sky began to show colors, like aurora lights but more intense, beautiful and dangerous. In orbit, Commander watched the storm develop. This was the planned part of the test that none of the participants knew about. Every species had access to the planet's data, including historical records of magnetic storms. But would anyone actually check? Would anyone prepare? The storm hit the alien camps like a hammer. Was inside his thermal dome when the lights flickered. For a moment, he thought it was nothing. Then the entire dome shimmered and died. The temperature inside began to drop immediately. "What happened?" his partner shouted. "The power system is offline." Checked the controls frantically. "The magnetic interference is blocking the circuits." They tried the backup systems. Those failed too. Within minutes, the comfortable 20-degree interior started dropping. -10, -30, -50. "Emergency beacon," his partner said, voice shaking. "No, we can fix this." But's confident voice didn't match the panic in his movements. In the camp, faced the same problem. The climate pod systems shut down all at once. The sophisticated computer controls were completely fried by the magnetic pulse. Emergency power tried to kick in, but the surge had damaged the connections. "The suit heaters are failing too," partner said, antennae twitching in fear. All across the frozen planet, alien teams watched their technology fail. Some systems could restart manually, but they were damaged or working at reduced capacity. Power cells that should have lasted days drained in hours trying to overcome the interference. Teams scrambled to adapt, but they had never planned for this. They had trusted their technology completely. 3 teams activated their emergency beacons within the first 2 hours. The cold was too much, too fast. Rescue transports came down from orbit and took them away. 3 more teams followed by evening. In the human camp, Min and Jin watched the sky show with interest. "Beautiful," Jin said. "The magnetic storm must be affecting electronic systems," Min observed. They checked their equipment. The power cell they had been using for lights was showing some fluctuation, but it still worked. They decided to turn it off anyway, conserving it for when the storm passed. "Good thing our primary heat source is a fire," Jin said with a slight smile. "Low tech for the win," Min agreed. They spent the rest of the day the same way they had spent the previous days, gathering methane, maintaining their fire, improving their shelter. The magnetic storm raged overhead, beautiful and deadly. But it didn't affect them. You can't disrupt a fire with a magnetic field. As night fell on day 5, the temperature dropped to negative 180 degrees. This was the coldest it had been yet. The storm seemed to make everything worse. Wind picked up, howling across the ice plains. But the human shelter held. The double walls kept the wind out. The fire burned steadily. The thermal mass rocks radiated their stored heat. Min and Jin sat in their small, warm space, eating their rations and talking quietly. "I wonder how the others are doing," Jin said. In camp, things were desperate. They had managed to get partial power back to the thermal dome, but it was barely working. The interior temperature was negative 40 degrees. His crystalline body was turning dull and cloudy from the cold. His partner was worse, with visible cracks forming. "We need to signal for rescue," the partner said through chattering teeth. "Not yet," insisted. "The storm will pass. We can survive this." But he was wrong. By midnight, his partner's body had several deep cracks. The cold was literally breaking them apart. Finally, reluctantly, hit the emergency beacon. The transport came within 30 minutes. Medical personnel loaded his partner onto the ship. They looked at. "You should come too," the medic said. "You're showing early-stage frostbite." "I can still continue," said. "Are you sure?" Looked at the damaged thermal dome, the failing systems, the brutal cold. He looked up at the transport, warm and safe. Then he thought about the humans, probably comfortable in their primitive shelter. His pride wouldn't let him quit. "I'm sure," he said. The transport left, taking his partner to safety. Was alone now. Had better luck. This natural adaptations included the ability to enter a low-energy state. By reducing body temperature and slowing metabolism, could survive longer on less heat. It wasn't comfortable, but it was possible. Still, his partner couldn't do the same and had to be evacuated. By morning of day 6, only 5 alien teams remained out of the original 12. The humans made it 6 teams total, but they were in far better condition than the others. Commander reviewed the data with growing respect. The monitoring stations showed that every alien team still on the planet was struggling. Power reserves critically low, equipment damaged, team members suffering from cold exposure. Some were barely hanging on. The human team's data was completely different. Stable temperature in their shelter, minimal equipment damage. Vital signs were actually better than when they started. They were getting regular exercise, staying warm, keeping their minds active with improvements and problem-solving. "They're not just surviving," his assistant said. "They're thriving." "Yes," agreed. "Because they never trusted the technology in the first place. They adapted to the environment instead of trying to control it." On the planet, Min worked on building a better chimney for their fire. The magnetic storm had finally passed during the night, but he had learned something from it. They needed to be ready for anything. Never assume conditions would stay the same. Jin was mapping a wider area around their camp. They had plenty of methane fuel, but she wanted to know what other resources were available. She found ice formations that could provide more protection, areas where the wind was less severe. "We could build a second shelter," she suggested when she returned. "Emergency backup in case something damages this one." "Good idea," Min said. "We have extra materials." They spent the day building, not because they had to, but because they could. Because humans always looked ahead, always planned for problems, always tried to improve their situation. That night in their warm shelter, they talked about Earth, about their families, about what they would do after the test. They didn't talk about quitting. That thought never crossed their minds. Outside, the temperature was negative 170 degrees. Inside, it was negative 30 and comfortable enough to sleep peacefully. In orbit, other species on the Council were beginning to understand something important. They had tested for survival. They had expected to see which species had the best technology, the strongest biology, the most advanced adaptations. But what they were actually seeing was which species could adapt when everything else failed. And the answer was surprising everyone. Day 9 arrived with clear skies and bitter cold. Min and Jin had now spent over a week on 9. Their shelter had evolved from a simple windbreak to a sophisticated survival structure. They had a main living chamber, a cold trap entrance that prevented heat loss, a dedicated cooking area, and even a small storage room carved into the ice. "We should probably stop improving things," Jin joked. "We're getting too comfortable." Min laughed. "Next you'll want to add decorations." "I was thinking curtains for the entrance." They were both in good spirits. The test was hard, yes, but they had found their rhythm. More importantly, they had proven to themselves that they could handle whatever the planet threw at them. Commander was thinking the same thing. He stood in the observation deck, watching the latest reports. Of the 12 original teams, only 3 alien teams remained. 2 more had quit during the night when their power systems failed completely. The humans continued without any problems at all. "The Council wants a meeting," his assistant said. "Tell them I'll report after day 10, replied. "I want to see how this plays out." What played out was both expected and surprising. Expected because it was clear the humans would succeed. Surprising because of what happened next. Min was outside gathering more methane when he spotted movement in the distance. Another person, stumbling across the ice. He watched for a moment, then called back to the shelter. "Jin, someone's coming." They both watched as the figure approached. It was the alien. The creature was moving slowly, clearly exhausted. When reached their camp, the alien collapsed. Jin rushed forward. "Are you hurt?" Cold managed to say. "Everything failed, power gone, no heat." Min and Jin looked at each other. Then, without discussing it, they helped into their shelter. There was shivering, if that was the right word for how its body was shaking. "Sit near the fire," Jin said. "Slowly. Don't warm up too fast or you'll damage your system." They gave some warm water and food. The alien sat near the methane fire, holding its limbs close to the flame. Gradually, the shaking stopped. "Thank you," said finally. "I didn't know where else to go. My partner was evacuated yesterday. I was trying to hold on, but—" The alien gestured helplessly. "My equipment all failed." "You walked here?" Min asked. "That's over 2 kilometers in this cold." "I monitored your camp from distance. I saw your shelter was working, I hoped," trailed off. "You made the right choice," Jin said. "But why didn't you signal for rescue?" Santini drooped. "Pride, I suppose, and curiosity. How are you doing this? How are humans surviving when species with far superior technology are failing?" Min fed another piece of methane to the fire. "We're surviving because we don't have superior technology. We can't depend on it, so we don't try to. We use simple solutions that can't fail." "Show me," said. For the rest of the day, Min and Jin taught the alien their methods. how to identify methane ice and safely harvest it, how to control the burn for consistent heat, how to create insulation with layers and air gaps, how to use thermal mass to store heat, how to manage ventilation without losing warmth. Learned quickly. By evening, there was helping maintain the fire and had even suggested some improvements using compound eyes to spot better methane deposits in the dark. Your species has good instincts, Jin observed. But we forgot to use them, replied. We became too dependent on our technology. If the climate pod worked perfectly, why learn to adapt? But then it failed and we had no other skills. That night the three of them sat around the fire, told them about the home world, a place of extreme temperature swings. Long ago, before technology, ancestors had survived those swings with behavioral adaptations. They had known how to find shelter, how to conserve heat, how to work together. Then we developed technology and forgot, said sadly. We forgot how to survive without it. It's not too late to remember, Min said. Look, you're doing it right now. In orbit, Commander watched the three figures on the monitoring screen. This was an unexpected development. The test rules didn't forbid helping other teams, but no one had expected it to happen. Most species were too competitive. The human team is sharing resources with his assistant reported. I can see that, said. Make a note of it. Cooperation under stress is a valuable trait for colonists. The council members watching were divided. Some saw it as the humans being soft, unable to compete properly. Others saw it differently. A species that helped others, that shared knowledge freely, might be exactly what frontier colonies needed. By day 10, was barely holding on. His thermal dome was functioning at maybe 20% capacity. He spent most of his time curled up, trying to conserve energy. His crystalline body was dull and cloudy. He had visible cracks now, just like his partner had before being evacuated. Through the pain and cold, could see the monitoring station reports on his failing console. 3 teams left. The humans, with the humans and himself. Everyone else had quit or been evacuated for medical reasons. He should quit too. He knew that, but something kept him going. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Or maybe it was because he had been so confident in the beginning, so sure of his superiority, and he couldn't face admitting he was wrong. 2 more teams gave up on day 11. They had lasted longer than most, but their power finally ran out completely. The rescue transports took them away. That left alone, and the humans still going strong. Min Jin and had settled into an easy cooperation. His presence actually helped. 3 people could rotate duties more easily than 2. 1 could sleep while 2 maintained the camp. They built another shelter nearby so had private space, using the techniques they had now learned. You know, said on the evening of day 12, when the test started I thought humans were primitive, weak, not evolved enough for galactic society. And now, Jin asked. Now I think we were measuring evolution wrong, replied. We measured it by technology and physical adaptations, but maybe the real evolution is mental, the ability to adapt, to learn, to find new solutions when old ones fail. Humans aren't the strongest or the fastest, Min agreed. We're not the most resistant to cold or heat or radiation, but we're stubborn and creative. When something doesn't work, we find something else that does. You call it primitive, we call it practical, Jin added. Made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Practical, yes, that's a good word. On day 13, finally accepted reality. He woke up unable to move properly. His body was shutting down from the cold. With the last of his strength, he activated the emergency beacon. The rescue transport arrived quickly. The medical team was shocked by his condition. Another few hours and he would have suffered permanent damage, possibly death. As they loaded him onto the transport, asked a question. The humans, are they still there? Yes, the medic said. They're fine, more than fine actually. They appear to be having a pleasant time. Wanted to laugh but couldn't. A pleasant time on a frozen hell world. Of course they were. The transport door closed and left 9 behind. He had failed. But in failing, he had learned something important. Superior technology didn't make a species superior, and primitive methods weren't really primitive at all. They were fundamental. Back in their shelter, Min added more fuel to the fire. Only 2 days remained. They would make it easily. They had enough supplies, enough fuel, enough knowledge. The test was essentially over. But for Min and Jin, it had never really been a test. It had just been another problem to solve. And humans were very, very good at solving problems. Day 15 arrived with sunrise painted across the ice. Min stood outside the shelter, watching the light spread across the frozen landscape. He had grown to appreciate the harsh beauty of this place. In 2 weeks, what had seemed like a frozen hell had become almost familiar. Last day, Jin said, joining him, "We made it." "We did more than make it," Min replied. "We actually lived here." Inside the shelter was preparing their morning meal. They had learned human cooking methods and was surprisingly good at it. They had even experimented with different ways to prepare their rations using heated rocks. "Breakfast is ready," called. They ate together, talking about what they would do after pickup. Wanted to take these survival methods back home, teach them to others. Jin was already planning a paper on human adaptability in extreme environments. Min was just looking forward to a hot shower. The transport wasn't scheduled until evening. They spent the day cleaning up their camp, documenting everything they had built. Jin took extensive notes and images. Min made diagrams of their shelter design, recorded everything to share with the species. "Someone else might need this information someday," Jin said. Commander was preparing his report for the council. The results were clear. Of 12 species tested, only the humans had completed all 15 days without significant problems. Had survived 2, but only after joining the humans and learning their methods. The council chamber was full when presented his findings. Representatives from all 12 tested species were present, including, now recovered but still showing faint cracks in his crystalline form. The test was designed to simulate real frontier conditions, began. Colonies fail not because planets are too harsh, but because colonists cannot adapt when their technology fails. And technology always fails eventually. Equipment breaks, power runs out, software glitches. The question is, can a species survive without it? He brought up data displays showing each team's performance. The graphs told a clear story. Alien teams started strong with comfortable conditions and stable systems. But as time passed, as the magnetic storm hit, as power drained and equipment failed, those graphs plummeted. One by one, teams failed. The human graph was different. It started lower, less comfortable, but it never dropped. Instead, it slowly climbed as they made improvements, learned more, adapted better. The human team used 5% of their power cells over 15 days, continued. They burned methane for heat. They built their shelter using basic materials and simple physics. When the magnetic storm destroyed everyone else's systems, it didn't affect them at all. Spoke up from his seat, because they had no advanced systems to destroy. Exactly, agreed. They succeeded because they didn't depend on what could fail. They used methods that had worked for their species for thousands of years before they even reached space. "That's primitive," another council member said. "Is it?" challenged. "Primitive suggests inferior, but what we observed was the opposite. The humans thrived while species with far more advanced technology failed. They adapted while others could not. They even shared their knowledge with another species, improving both their chances." He brought up images of Min and Jin teaching their methods. "This is not primitive behavior. This is advanced social behavior, the ability to cooperate, to teach, to help others survive. These are the traits frontier colonies need most." The chamber was quiet. Many council members were reconsidering their assumptions. Stood up to speak. I wish to address the council. The move to the center. I failed, my technology failed, I was going to die. The humans saved me, but more than that, they taught me. They shared everything they knew. In my culture, competitors do not help each other, but humans did, and in doing so, they showed something important. Paused, antennae waving. On frontier worlds, colonists must work together, share resources, help each other survive. The humans didn't just survive nine, they created community. That is what makes them ready for frontier colonization. Stood next, this was unexpected. The crystalline being still had visible damage from his ordeal. I opposed humanity's inclusion in this test. I said they were too primitive, too weak. I was wrong. His voice resonated through the chamber. I had the best technology, the most advanced systems, and I nearly died. Meanwhile, the humans, with their primitive methods, were comfortable, safe, growing stronger each day. He turned to face the council directly. We have become dependent on our technology. We have forgotten how to survive without it. The humans never forgot. They never had the luxury of forgetting, and that makes them more prepared for frontier worlds than any of us. The council deliberated for an hour, but the decision was clear. When they reconvened, the head counselor spoke. By unanimous decision, humanity is granted a permanent seat on the Frontier Colonization Committee. Further, we request that human survival experts be made available to train colonists from all species. The methods demonstrated on 9 should be standard knowledge for anyone attempting frontier settlement. Back on the planet, Min and Jin were waiting for pickup when their communication device activated. It was Commander. "Congratulations," he said. "You not only passed the test, you redefined it. The Council wants to meet with you." "Did we win?" Min asked. Win laughed. "You didn't just win. You changed how we think about survival, about adaptation, about what makes a species ready for the frontier." The transport arrived as the sun set on day 15. Min, Jin, and loaded their equipment. Before boarding, Min took one last look at their shelter. It still stood strong against the wind, smoke rising from the chimney. A monument to human practicality. "Goodbye, frozen hell," he said. "It wasn't so bad," Jin replied. "We had fire, we had shelter, we had each other. That's all humans really need." The transport lifted off, leaving the ice planet behind. As they rose into space, they could see 9 from above. A beautiful, terrible, frozen world. A place that had tested them and found them worthy. In the transport, asked the question everyone would be asking. How did you do it? Really? What's the secret to human survival? Min thought for a moment. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We don't have the best technology or the most impressive biology. "Then what do you have?" asked. Jin smiled. "We have stubbornness. We have creativity. We refuse to quit, and we're really good at solving problems with whatever we have available. Evolution made us generalists, not specialists. We can't run the fastest, but we can run far. We can't lift the most, but we can build tools. We're not adapted to any specific environment, so we learn to adapt to all of them. Plus," Min added, "we really don't like being cold. That's excellent motivation." Made that clicking laugh sound. "I will tell my people this. The human secret is being stubborn and hating the cold." "That's about right," Min agreed. As they docked with the orbital station, they received a standing ovation. Species from across the galaxy had been watching the test. News had spread about the humans who survived a frozen hell with nothing but fire and determination. Was there too, recovered from his injuries. He approached the humans slowly. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I called you primitive, I looked down on you, I was wrong." "No hard feelings," Jin said. "You did what you thought was right, we all did." Still insisted. "I learned something important on that planet. Technology is wonderful, but knowing how to survive without it is wisdom." Min extended his hand. "Then we're both wiser now." touched the human's hand carefully, a gesture of respect between species. The council meeting that followed was more celebration than formality. Humanity was officially welcomed as a frontier species. Requests flooded in from other species wanting to learn human survival techniques. Min and Jin suddenly found themselves as teachers, trainers, ambassadors. But late that night, after all the ceremonies were done, they sat together in their quarters and shared a quiet meal. "Think we'll ever go back to 9?" Jin asked. "Maybe," Min said, "but next time I'm bringing a better coat." They laughed. They had faced a frozen hell and won. Not because they were superior, but because they were human. And being human meant adapting, surviving, and never giving up. Somewhere in the galaxy, a new frontier world was waiting. A harsh place where technology would fail and conditions would be brutal. But now, thanks to two humans and their simple fire, colonists would be ready. They would know that survival wasn't about having the best equipment. It was about having the knowledge, creativity, and stubborn determination to keep going when everything else failed. That was the human way. That was the lesson of 9. And that was why humanity had earned its place among the stars.